Okay, so get this right. Imagine you're doing some online shopping, and then bam, you get hit with these crazy shipping fees. And it's all because of, like, some international incident. Sounds wild, right?
Yeah.
Well, it might be closer to reality than you think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're diving deep into a story that's got everyone talking global trade, history, the whole nine yards. It all started with Donald Trump and his comments about the Panama Canal.
This is going to be good. The sources you sent, really fascinating stuff. News articles from AFP, DW, covering the reactions, and then direct quotes from Trump himself on Truth Social, and even some stuff about Jimmy Carter and Omar Torrijos. It's like history colliding with, well, everything.
You're not kidding. Even I was surprised by some of this stuff, how tense things are down there. So basically, Trump just comes out and says, and I quote this, the U.S. should get the Panama Canal back. He's saying American ships are getting charged these exorbitant fees, calls it ridiculous and highly unfair. And get this, he even posts this picture on Truth Social, American flag, right down the middle of the Panama Canal.
Wow. Bold move.
Totally. But hold on, it gets even better, or worse, I guess, depends on how you look at it. His son, Eric, jumps in and posts, like, this mock Amazon shopping cart, right? And in it, Greenland, the Panama Canal, and Canada.
Okay, now that's just got to be a meme, right?
Oh, absolutely. But memes aside, there's some serious history here that we need to understand.
For sure, yeah. I mean, the U.S. has been involved with the canal since the early 1900s, but the big shift came with the Torrijos-Carter treaties in '77. And these weren't just about handing back the canal, no. These were complex negotiations, major concessions on both sides. Like, the U.S., they agreed to gradually transfer control to Panama by 1999, but they also held on to the right to, defend the canal's neutrality. Panama, on their end, they guaranteed the canal would keep running, and they agreed to limit their military presence around the canal zone.
So not a simple give it back kind of situation, more like a really delicate balancing act, took years to finalize.
Exactly.
Knowing that history, I can't imagine Trump's comments went over well in Panama.
Yeah, you could say that. Panama was not happy, to put it mildly. The response was immediate, strong. Their president, Jose Raul Molino, he put out a statement, no room for misinterpretation, Panama Canal, non-negotiable. And to drive the point home, he got 3 former presidents to co-sign that thing. Talk about a united front.
And it wasn't just the government, right? Like, the Panamanian people were fired up too. Protests in Panama City, people burning pictures of Trump, chanting slogans like, Trump, animal, leave the canal alone. I mean, one protester, Jorge Guzman, he said, and this really captures it, the Panamanian people have shown that they are capable of recovering their territory, and we are not going to give it up again.
Wow. Powerful statement.
Totally. And then there's Saul Mendez. He's a construction union leader, and he calls it Trump's imperial delusion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. I mean, it highlights that deep resentment towards, like, any hint of the U.S. trying to control the canal again.
It makes sense, yeah.
So this isn't just about fees. This is about national pride, about Panama asserting its sovereignty. They're basically saying, hey, we're a player on the world stage. Don't mess with us.
Exactly. And it's not just Panama. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, ALBA, they also denounced Trump's comments.
The ALBA.
Yeah, 10 Central and South American countries. They're kind of like a counterweight to U.S. influence in the region,
Yeah.
And they basically said, hands off the canal. So it's bigger than just the U.S. and Panama. It's a regional concern now.
Wow. Okay. Things are heating up.
And we haven't even talked about China yet.
Oh, yeah. The China factor.
Right. And Trump didn't hold back there. He's suggesting China's behind these unfair fees, hinting at their growing influence in Panama.
Yeah. He went there.
So if we look at the bigger picture here, China's presence in Panama has definitely been growing. They're the second largest user of the canal after the U.S., big investments in infrastructure, trade, you name it.
Yeah.
In 2017, Panama actually cut ties with Taiwan and recognized China. So Beijing's influence is definitely on the rise.
Okay, help me out here. Even if Trump can't legally take back the canal, can his words still hurt Panama? Like, could this push them closer to China?
Great question. And that's where things get really interesting. To understand this, we got to unpack Trump's motives and see what each player stands to gain or lose. So to really understand Trump's comments about the Panama Canal, you got to look at it through his America First lens. Like he often sees international stuff as like a zero-sum game. If the U.S. wins, someone else has to lose.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Like, remember when he threatened tariffs on Mexico unless they, like, crack down on migration? Pretty aggressive approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But with the Panama Canal, it's trickier. I mean, those treaties from '77, they make it clear the canal belongs to Panama. If the U.S. just took it over, well, first off, imagine the global backlash
Oh, yeah.
and the damage to relations, not just with Panama, but the entire region. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
And the economic fallout. I mean, the Panama Canal isn't just some historical thing. It's like a major artery for global trade.
Absolutely.
Thousands of ships passing through every year. Cars, grain, electronics, everything.
Right. And imagine those ships suddenly getting stuck. Massive delays, shipping costs going through the roof. And it wouldn't just be us. The whole global economy would feel it. Even just the threat of that happening could spook investors and businesses.
But isn't Trump kind of known for, well, bluster? Is this really different from his usual tactics? Like, should Panama actually be worried?
That's the million-dollar question. Some people think, yeah, this is just Trump stirring the pot,
Yeah.
Applying pressure to get what he wants in negotiations later. Maybe he's hoping Panama gets nervous enough and offers concessions, lower fees for U.S. ships, whatever, just to avoid a bigger fight.
So kind of like a high-stakes poker game. He's gone all in with a bluff.
Exactly. But the stakes are really high here.
Yeah.
His words, even if it's just bluster, they can backfire big time. It's already causing, anti-American feelings in Panama and the region. It's not going to help the U.S. achieve any long-term goals, especially with China already making moves there.
Right, okay, so let's talk about China. How much of Trump's concern about their influence is, legitimate? And how much is just political maneuvering?
Well, China's presence in Panama has definitely grown. That's undeniable. Big investments in infrastructure, trade, they're building relationships with Panamanian leaders. Some people see this as a strategy to challenge U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere.
So it's this, geopolitical rivalry, and the Panama Canal is stuck right in the middle, kind of like a pawn in a chess match.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And for Panama, they're stuck between these two superpowers.
Right. Panama's walking a tightrope here, trying to stay on good terms with both the U.S. and China, while also fiercely defending their own sovereignty.
Yeah.
They want to be friends with everyone, but it's tricky, especially with Trump's comments adding fuel to the fire.
It sounds like a no-win situation. You don't want to upset either of these global giants, but you also don't want to be, bullied or taken advantage of.
Exactly. They're charting their own course, focusing on what's best for Panama. But every move is risky. And here's where things get interesting. For you, the listener, think about the global supply chain. All those things you order online, the stuff that goes into making, everything. A lot of it goes through the Panama Canal.
Right.
So if things get messy there, it could affect prices, availability, even whole industries.
It's like we're watching a real-time game of Risk. Countries fighting for control over these, crucial choke points.
And those choke points are becoming even more important as global trade grows. The Panama Canal, it's not just about shipping lanes. It's about power, influence, who can project their economic and military might.
Which brings us back to Trump. He thinks he's putting America first, but he could actually be handing China a win.
That's a real possibility, yeah. I mean, think about it. If the U.S. is seen as unreliable, aggressive, even threatening, it leaves the door open for China.
Yeah.
They can step in and be the stable, responsible alternative, offer good loans to Panama, invest even more in their infrastructure, maybe even undercut U.S. shipping rates to, gain a stronger foothold in the region.
So this isn't just about the Panama Canal anymore. It's about the future of global trade, about who calls the shots.
Exactly. This isn't just about one waterway. It's a glimpse into this huge power struggle happening globally. And the stakes are massive.
Okay, so we've talked about the history, the politics, the economics, even the risks. But what about the people in Panama? I mean, they're not just pieces on a chessboard. They're real people whose lives are affected by this.
You're absolutely right. We can't forget the human element here. Panama depends a lot on the canal for money. It's a big part of their economy. So if there's disruptions, if fees are lowered because of pressure from outside, it could really hurt Panama's development plans, their ability to invest in things like education, healthcare, social programs,
This isn't just some abstract geopolitical game. It's about real people's lives.
Exactly. And there's another layer to this. Panama's own internal politics. How will this controversy play out in their next election? Will it fuel anti-American sentiment, give a boost to candidates who are closer to China? It's like every time we look closer, we find more complexities, more layers to this story. It's almost overwhelming.
I know, right?
But that's what these deep dives are all about. We're peeling back the layers of a complex system, trying to understand how everything connects and how events ripple outward.
And those ripples, in this case, they're reaching all the way to us. This isn't just some far-off thing. It's a story that could have very real consequences for everyone. So it really feels like this whole Panama Canal thing. It's like a tiny version of this huge power shift happening in the world. The U.S. isn't calling all the shots anymore, and China's influence is growing fast.
Oh, it's classic, really, like textbook emerging superpower, challenging the established order. And the way they're doing it, that's what's interesting. No big military stuff, not yet anyway. They're playing the long game, economic influence, partnerships, soft power, all that.
So while Trump's all about taking back the canal, China's over there quietly building relationships, like positioning themselves as the reliable friend, the good guy, almost like they're playing 4D chess while everyone else is stuck with checkers.
Huh. That's a good one. And the thing is, that approach, it works. A lot of countries in the region, they're not so keen on the U.S. remembering all the interventions, the stuff that, didn't always work out so well.
Yeah, the history is definitely there. It's like those past interventions are shaping how people see things now.
Exactly. And China knows how to use that, you know. They're smart. They come in, hey, we're your partner, not your boss, offering help with development, infrastructure, trade deals, all that, without demanding anything in return.
So maybe, and I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe Trump's actually helping China without realizing it. All this instability, the uncertainty he's creating, it might push countries closer to China, like, hey, at least they're not causing chaos.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. And it's not just Panama we're talking about here. It's happening all over Africa, Southeast Asia. China's offering a different way of doing things on the global stage. Less about military, more about cooperation, economics.
This is not even about who runs the Panama Canal anymore. It's bigger, right? Like, who controls the future of global trade? Who gets to make the rules?
That's the heart of it, yeah. This whole power transition, these little incidents we see happening, they're all part of this bigger story. But for our listeners, this isn't just some theoretical thing. This impacts their lives directly. Think about China's Belt and Road Initiative, massive infrastructure project all over the place, right? It's designed to change global trade routes. So, if China gets more control over these key points, like the Panama Canal, it could tip the scales in their favor. What does that mean? Maybe higher prices for us, relying on China for everything, even political pressure.
Wow. Okay, that puts things in perspective. Suddenly, this one thing with the Panama Canal feels like we're peeking into this much bigger, more complicated story. The future of, everything almost.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to understand these forces shaping our world, how they impact us every day, even if we don't realize it.
So we've talked about a lot. History, politics, economics, how this affects people. It's a lot to take in. For our listeners who might be feeling, a little overwhelmed, what are the big takeaways from all this? From our Panama Canal deep dive?
3 things, I think. First, the Panama Canal. It's not just a canal. It's a symbol of national pride for Panama. Any talk of the U.S. taking it back, forget it. Huge resistance.
Yeah.
Second, this whole situation shows how global power is shifting. China's on the rise, challenging the U.S. And third, this thing that seems like an isolated event, it's actually connected to everything. It could affect all of us. Prices we pay, the stability of the global economy, everything.
And as always, we want to leave our listeners with something to think about. What happens next with the Panama Canal? How will this change things globally in the years to come? Will the U.S. and China figure out how to, coexist peacefully? Or will all this competition for these strategic spots lead to more tension, more instability?
Tough questions. No easy answers.
Yeah.
But hopefully, after this deep dive, you've got the background, the knowledge, to start asking the right questions yourselves. Keep thinking about it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another exploration of, everything going on in the world.